Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Wholesale Hotties, the place where ladies in real estate are talking about real estate. I'm your host and MC, Sharon Lee Smith, together with my favorite co-hosts, Donda Molinex. Hey, Donda.
Hi.
Monique Bell down below me. Hey, Monique. And Jen Stewart over in the corner. Hey, Jen.
Hello, ladies.
Okay, listen, before I introduce our amazing guest today, I have to just chuckle at all of you because I'm sitting here, like there's a thumbnail on my screen and I can see you all like brushing your hair and getting on your lipstick and all the things before the show. It's really cute. And here I am in my frumpy sweatshirt and my ponytail. Too funny. Today we have an amazing guest who I am just so excited to have on the show because I have been trying to get in her ear for over a year now.
Oh.
This is the amazing Luz Ramirez. Hi, Luz. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. So, ladies, if you didn't know, Luz does grant writing.
Oh, great. Yes, she does.
And that very much intrigues me. But let's start with, hey, Luz, welcome to the show. How did you get into real estate? What do you do? Tell us about you.
Okay. Hi. Thank you so much for having me on. So I did not start out by being involved in real estate until about 2021. I think that was the time. But really the bug bit us. That's the word. The bug bit us right around COVID time. It was more about, I think it happened for a lot of people where we started to reflect on what are we doing with our lives? Is this really what we want to do? For me, I was in the nonprofit world, so I was busy nonstop. I did not get months and months and months of sitting at home doing nothing. I was the complete opposite. I was extremely busy. I was working longer hours than I had been working before. We were helping all kinds of people get food, get gift cards so that they could go out and get the bare necessities, delivering items to their homes because they couldn't leave the home. Anyway, all kinds of stuff were happening. All kinds of things were happening at the time. And it was a moment for me to say, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? I love what I'm doing. However, I feel like I need something different. And my husband had kind of hit the same point of, yeah, we need to figure something out that's different. And so he started reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I feel like a lot of people started out with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah. And then he said, you have to read this book. I said, okay, I'll read it. I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, guess where I want to be. And so immediately when you look at the quadrant, I knew where I wanted to be. I did not want to be in any of the three boxes other than investor. I wanted to be an I. And so that's where it started. So we were able to get our first home, our first property. And it was an interesting story how we got in. We didn't have the money. As most people who want to go into investing, you don't have a lot of money just sitting around. And so my husband did start investing in Bitcoin right around 2017. So he wasn't one of the early adopters, but he was early enough where he had a little bit of something. And his cousin had properties. He had been buying properties. And so they ended up doing a swap. They came to an agreement that they would swap some Bitcoin for one of the properties. And that's how we got our first property. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's the first one I've heard with Bitcoin. That's cool.
Yeah. So we ended up doing a cash out refinance. We took that money, put it into another property and so on and so forth. And that's how we built our portfolio. And then as with everything, one thing takes you to another. We discovered Bigger Pockets, discovered Pace, got into Pace's community, and the rest is history. So yeah, now it's full-time investing. I left my job in January last year. In 2024, yeah, thank you. In 2024, I had cut back to 30 hours. I had already put a plan in place for leaving my W-2. And then officially at the beginning of this year, I was going to go until June, but then it happened sooner and it all worked out because I had hit that point where I no longer wanted to be there. I didn't find any joy there. I had already transitioned everything over to other people. I had built up the capacity of my staff. They were self-sufficient. They didn't need me. And so I really could just easily step out, except for the grant writing. That was really the only purpose I was filling at the agency at that point was the grant.
Yeah.
I was just kind of waiting for the new grants to come out for me to work on them. But the CEO knew that I was ready to go. She was able to find somebody to come in and do the grant writing. And so it was a very easy exit for me. And then I just moved all into investing.
Amazing. So, okay, I don't know which direction to go with this.
Right?
I know, like I'm so.
Are you holding properties? What? Yeah, right.
There you go.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So my husband and I are doing buy and hold. So we have been selling off our single families and moving into duplexes and triplexes. So we've been expanding little by little. He likes to take things slow. I like to run and jump into everything and say yes to everything. So we operate very differently. Yes. And so I'm basically running two businesses, you know, the one where I'm operating business with him, where we go at his pace. And then I've got a business partner on the side, Ann McNamara, and we're just moving forward. And we're like, yes, let's do it. Let's do it all. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then I've got a couple other people that I work with. So I've always been very energetic and love to just be involved and have my hands in all kinds of things. I can't be bored. It drives me nuts to sit and do nothing. So I am working on different projects and I love it. I love it. It keeps me very busy. I can't complain about how busy I am because I absolutely love it. And so I am doing buy and hold with my husband. And with Anne, we're actually exploring a couple different projects. One is a ground up development that we have been commissioned by a city. They have grants available. And they had set these grant funds aside to be able to do this development. And they reached out to me because they saw that I was involved in real estate. They'd known me from the nonprofit world. They knew that I worked with this segment population that they want to house. And they said, okay, if we give you this money, how much can you build us and by when? And so that's kind of been the premise of it. We've been working on this project now for about 9 months. And we're hoping that we're entering a new phase where we can just really hit the ground running and just go with it. So once we secure the land and we identify the land, we're going to move forward and build this. And then the other project is we thought we wanted to do co-living. So we went into it. And so we've been in the middle of a project. We've partnered up with a couple other individuals who have the property and they're fixing and rehabbing it. It's just taking much longer. Our background has always been in the nonprofit world, working with underserved populations. And so we thought it would be a really good route for us to secure the tenants, we call them participants in the nonprofit world, tenants or landlords. And so our thought was we will connect with nonprofits and social service agencies to secure the individuals that need the housing and then work through that way. So that's what we've been doing, but the property hasn't been ready yet. In the meantime, we decided, you know what, maybe co-living is not the area we want to go with. So that's still working until we get until the property's ready to go. But we've now pivoted to, other projects. So right now we're actively looking for an RV park and we are still working on the transitional housing project. And then we know that our strength is in building relationships with municipalities, with cities, finding the grant funding. And so that's kind of the area that we're moving into, is knowing how to leverage those relationships and whatever funding they have available to be able to get the housing needed. So whether it's they secure the grants or we help them secure the grants, and then we provide exactly what they're looking for. We have found that the one thing that I've discovered early on because of my experience in the nonprofit world is you can write for grants and you can get the funding, but if you don't have the end user, you don't have the product, there's no point in having the funding because you can sit there with funding that you received, but nowhere to pay, nowhere to expense it out. So the biggest problem that you will find with every nonprofit that works with service, with target populations, whatever population it is, the one need that they all identify that they cannot fill is housing.
Okay.
So the world that we are living in now as real estate investors, guess what we have access to? Housing. So it's
I'm like on the edge of my seat because this is exactly what I'm trying to get into. Like I have this vision for domestic violence transitional housing and like a whole 1-year transitional life program for people where they come into the housing, they get employment retraining, and they can start a new life. And we either transition them into other housing that we have, like other apartments, or, transition them out of the program. And so I'm like on the edge of my seat, like, this is amazing.
So that's exactly what this transitional housing development is. It will be for families fleeing domestic violence. Now, the city that we're working with, this is a passion project of the mayor. And when he started, he became mayor the first time around, he campaigned on reducing domestic violence in the city. They actually raised funds and created this center. It's a one-stop shop for anybody who's fleeing a situation where there is violence in the home. And they can come here and get all the services that they need. So agencies co-locate at this agency. So these families don't have to go to 10 different agencies across the city. They come to this agency. But then they discovered, hey, we have nowhere to place them. So what happens when they have nowhere to go, nowhere safe to go? They go back to the situation that they were trying to flee.
Every time.
So this is the reason that they have set this funding aside, grant funding, to be able to put towards this development. And so the biggest thing, so housing is a need for agencies. But then the other thing that we discovered is that when you are the funder, the one who can receive the funding, you could have the funding for the housing, but who's going to build it for you? So also finding the developers who are willing to do these types of special projects are difficult to come by. So we realized that, hey, we're going to become whatever you need for whatever you want, for the funding that you need to provide to build. So we come to you, we'll design it, we'll build it, we finance it, and then we operate the property until we're able to flip it out and sell it to somebody else. So.
And why is it that developers are tough to find? Because I would think if it's work, they might be interested in doing that kind of, or do they have to take a discount, or do they wait for money? Is it something that maybe is kind of, because I'm a contractor, so I'm just wondering, what would that look like if I wanted to develop, something like that? Is it too tough? Because I develop other properties,
There are lots of different reasons. A lot of developers have their niche, their area that they like to work in. Sometimes will prefer to do luxury build. Others will, it just depends on what their area is of expertise. And the intersection of somebody who's familiar with using the grants and somebody who's familiar with serving underserved populations and developing in real estate is really what you would consider a unicorn. So I think that's probably it. It's not that they wouldn't be willing. I think it's the lack of knowledge and the lack of understanding. I know that there are developers for affordable housing, and they know how to secure low-income tax credits from the state or from the federal government to be able to do their developments. But they're focused on affordable housing, and they know how to use the system of low-income tax credits. This is a different way of developing. You could use LIHTC. You could use different grants that are available, like Home ARP, CDBG. So these are all different types of grants that could be available for development. But I think it's a lack of knowledge, definitely. So I think the developers, if they don't know that this is something that they could go after, or it's not their niche and it's not their interest, then they won't do it. It's not easy. So that's the other piece of it. It's not easy. There are a lot of moving parts to this. We have to make sure that we're building this in an area where we're not going to have an issue with NIMBYism. So not in my backyard is a big problem that we have in the city that we're going to be doing the development. So we have to be very conscientious of everybody gets on board, or we don't have a ward that is going to have an issue with us building in that area. So there are additional components that you have to deal with.
As well as safety issues, right? Like I've been in domestic violence shelters 3 different times, right? And each shelter, it was always like this nondescript, larger single family home in a quiet little neighborhood. You would never know that that's a domestic violence shelter unless you were in the home. Mm-hmm. Right. And so when you're talking about development, that actually kind of strikes a little bit of a fear in my mind. I'm thinking, if this is like out in the open, here's this shelter, right, for these people. You're anticipating my question and shaking your head, which I'm glad that you are. But, here we are out in the open. Here's this shelter, and we're saying, hey, we're housing domestic violence people. Like, how does that, how do the people not be found?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be an undisclosed location. That is obviously what we're shooting for. We actually walked a model that already exists in another city. And we were able to, we'd been talking to the executive director. When we visited, she actually walked us through and explained how they operate. And from the outside, nobody knows what goes on the inside. There's this building. They never take pictures or video or anything of the outside, the exterior of this property ever. It's located actually in a very dense area because it's a historic district. So surprisingly enough, it happens to be in this middle of this historic district. So there is a lot of traffic there, but nobody knows. And the entrance is through the alleyway, and there is a door that you go through, and then there's a second door. And then the inside, once you get in there, then you see it's like a courtyard, and then you see the apartments all around. And
fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Love it.
And they have set it up so that there are ways where the city and all the different entities that are involved, they keep this property undisclosed so that nobody knows where the location is. Mail, the post office is involved in this. So if any mail ever comes, there's never an address. There are systems already in place that can be used across. It's quite fascinating. But the fact that they're able to keep this place completely undisclosed is pretty great. And so that would be the goal here as well. So we had already started. Yeah, go ahead.
So most cities would have something like that. Is that what you're saying, in place? And it's just a matter of getting, then I'm assuming, with the right people to discuss, hey, I've got the knowledge, I've got the ability to do this, this, and this. How can we help?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once you know that the purpose of this space or this location, this site is going to be for this, you just get the right people, organizations, and businesses involved so that now everybody is aware, okay, this location will remain undisclosed. This is what we're doing here. Nobody needs to know what's happening here. And that's how you secure the safety of the women. Obviously, we're building in some additional, security measures as far as, windows and doors and locks and security cameras. And so there'll be additional things that will be part of it. Yeah.
Sure. But if you don't know, you don't know. And so that alone, the anonymity alone is a huge component of the safety.
Exactly.
And is this kind of transitional housing predominantly focused on battered women or women that are, can it include like clean and sober housing and, that type of other?
So this one that we're working on is only for families fleeing domestic violence, women and children. Would we take men? No, probably not, because we want to ensure the safety of the women and want to make sure that they're feeling comfortable. Can you do this with other models? Absolutely. Can you do this with any other type of target population? Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was one like that in Yakima where I came from, and I always donated to them and stuff. And yeah, it was very secure. It was it was a building they took that was for senior living by the hospital. And so I don't think people even thought it had changed hands. I think people just thought that's what it was. And so, but you had a door, and you had to talk through the thing and have a code to be able to get through the first door so that you could, but you had to been cleared to be able to go through that process. But you never saw the kids or families. It was very, like you said, very secure and stuff. I never got past a certain point, but there's a big need for it, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So ideally what we would like to do is be able to create a model where then now we go out and take this across the US and different states and cities and say, okay, you have a need for this. We've already built this. We've developed it from the ground up. We have a model that we can now replicate. Let's do this. So, yeah.
Would you deploy your team, or would you be looking for teams in different cities to deploy with them?
I think it would be both. I think locally we're working with people that we can get here or near us. I think the core team would probably be the one that would be on the ground wherever we would go. But then the rest of the teams we would probably hire from whatever community we would be in.
So the state of Virginia, when because I was transported from New Hampshire to Virginia by the United States Attorney General Domestic Violence Protection Program. Wow. And when I first got to Virginia, there was something like 37 shelters across the state. Today there's 12.
Oh, wow.
COVID shut so many of them down. And I imagine that Virginia's not the only state like that. And, you know, like when you're talking about a house that might be like, to the outside world looks like a large farmhouse, you know, but it's maybe a 12 or 14 bedroom house, and the number of people that can feasibly live in that house, it can't be more than maybe 30 people, right? And when you're talking about an entire state and there's 12 houses with 30 beds,
Yeah.
the need is so vast.
Yeah.
And that's just here. I you know, like state to state to state. And when you start talking about men, right, there is no shelters that house men, and I'm sorry, but men are abused too.
Well, that's what I was going to ask is, has anyone done any market research on the demand for men? Because I can't tell you how many men have privately come to me and said, oh, my wife hits me whenever she gets drunk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, didn't their dads teach them that's a really bad idea? Like my dad sat me down. He's like, Jen, don't you ever hit a man because he can knock you out with one punch.
Yeah.
I've always just used my mouth to get out of trouble, even with the police in my youth. So I can't imagine trying to use my fists to get out of trouble with a man.
That's a story for another show.
It doesn't sound like a good plan at all. But a good man is just, he's not going to hit back. He's going to take it. He's going to take it quietly. And no one advertises up front before they get married. Oh, hey, do you mind if I hit you from time to time? Would that be okay? Like, you don't know the women are going to do that. You know the men are going to do that. And so what do the men do? They can't even tell them. People are just going to laugh at them.
Yeah, they're a minority.
Exactly. 1,000%. Yeah. And like the more when Pace first started having us write our Mount Everest, right? And I wrote this out and I started sharing this with people. So many men would come to me privately and be like, because my passion is for men, right? I'm a mom of 2 boys.
Oh yeah.
And I watch them be hurt, right? And I can only imagine as they grow, if they get into abusive relationships, and knowing, right, that once upon a time there was 1 shelter in the whole state that would house men, and now there is 0, not 1. And what do they do? What do they do? And you're absolutely right that if they admit to anyone that they're being abused, then they're made fun of by the men in the world.
There's a stigma. Yes,
it's
absolutely.
Terrible.
And abuse goes both ways too, because you also have a lot of men who are in same-sex relationships. And so, you know, that also happens. And so there's, you know, the stigma of men being abused is a problem. And they are a minority, but they exist. And then they have less recourses. They really have less places to go, whether for whatever reason, because one, it's a woman who is abusing them. So that alone is embarrassing. Or they're allowing a partner who is another male abuse them as well. So again, it's harder for them. But one of the things that we do see that is a problem is that there are shelters available, but the shelters are congregate shelters. And so one of the biggest things that you see is moms do not want to move into a place with children where you have adult men and adult women sleeping all in the same general area in cots. That's not a safe situation. So what do? They think, I'm probably better off dealing with the beast I have at home and the abuse that I get at home than putting my children in a place where they could be unsafe and hurt by strangers. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but this is the solution is creating more of these spaces, safe, affordable housing that is transitional, allowing them to come, adjust, you know, anywhere from 3 to 12 months if necessary, and then that allows them to put everything that they need in place to then go and be successful on their own with their families.
Yeah.
You know, just in my town here, in probably a 3-mile stretch on one of the main roads, there has got to be at least a dozen old rundown motels that are no longer in business. And all I can think is, man, you know, here's a strip row of what you could make into efficiency apartments that would, you know, house homeless, house domestic violence, and eliminate so many problems from society.
And you can do that by securing the right grants. So you can find funding for that.
Call me.
Yes, you definitely need to work with Luz. Luz, so what's the difference between the nonprofits and the for-profits? Because I know people have said, "Oh, I only do for-profit," and maybe explain that a little bit to the people out there, and which way you guys are going if yours is a nonprofit. And
so we are not a nonprofit. We're operating as a business. So we are coming in from the side of we can apply for grants where we do not have to have that 501c3 status or nonprofit status. Okay. Right. We're coming in as a developer. We're not running any type of nonprofit services. Our goal is to have an operator that is a nonprofit so that they are the ones who are placing the individuals, the families, the survivors in the homes. We are going to be operating the property as a landlord. Okay. So we're still going to stay in our lane as an investor.
Okay. So you would be using like the YWCA or somebody, whoever had the, okay.
Correct. Whoever the agency is that's serving the victims or the survivors, okay? They're the ones who are going to be placing the individuals in the homes. Now, what is the difference is just that. One, you can make a profit, and that is perfectly fine. On the other one, you cannot make a profit. Whatever income comes in has to go to serve your programs and the all the staff or the supplies, materials, the operations necessary to run the nonprofit. So if there's a profit at the end of the year, that a surplus, let's not call it profit, let's call it a surplus. That surplus must stay in the organization and be used for the benefit of the program services and the agency. So as the CEO, because we had a surplus, I cannot give out bonuses to all my staff. Okay. Now I have to use that surplus and save it as part of the agency that will go to continue serving the agency. That means that maybe I can offer more services, or I can grow one of my other programs, or I can provide more housing. I can pay for more housing. So again, a nonprofit has to operate a little bit differently. When let's say I chose to run a nonprofit and I'm going to be the person who I am going to develop and build these properties. I'm also going to apply for grant funding, and I am going to secure the funding to work with the individuals and place them in the properties. Can I do that? Sure. I can have a nonprofit arm and I can have a for-profit arm. However, I can't just make money off of it. I would have to pay myself a salary out of the nonprofit, or anybody who would be receiving funding from the nonprofit would have to be paid through a salary. Okay, so that's the difference. Whereas in a for-profit, you can just make the money and, you pay yourself your bonuses, or this is the income that you have as part of running a business.
Got it.
Yeah. So when it comes to real estate investing, what are ways that investors can target and or qualify and or apply for grants to help whatever they happen to be working on in the moment? I mean, are there things that they can do besides, the domestic violence? Are there other ways, even like RV parks? You're doing RV parks. Are there ways that you can tap into funding that's available to be able to progress in that industry?
Absolutely. The answer to that is, what is the problem you need to solve, or you're trying to solve, or you will be solving? So if you are providing housing, and there is a problem that exists in the area where you're going to provide this housing, and what is that problem? And then who are you solving the problem for? And chances are is that if there is a group, or the city or a county or the state or the federal government has identified that this is a problem in your area and they have set aside funding for it, you can apply for it.
Where would you start asking? Who would you start asking? Where are the issues at, and how you could help with the community you live in?
I think your community. Start finding out in your community what are the biggest problems. A lot of communities will have community studies. I would start there. I would start asking, if you know anybody at the city, what are the biggest problems that they're seeing? Start looking at nonprofits. What are the nonprofits? Who are the nonprofits serving? So maybe you have a lot of nonprofits that are serving veterans. Then maybe there's a problem with veteran housing, so you kind of have to start looking at your community and seeing, what has been identified as the problem, and then go from there.
Have you found a common problem? Like maybe these are the top 10, or this is top 15, or you see this almost in every city, or is there something like, maybe it's a 55 plus community, or something that has kind of stood out?
Okay. So you're saying common problems across the board, all over?
Yeah, or the top 10.
It'd be hard to say the top 10. I think all communities and cities are unique. However, homelessness is a huge problem, and housing, therefore, I believe a common thread across the U.S. is housing. There is a shortage of housing everywhere. Okay. There's no denying that. Now, the populations, it just depends on what the cities have done to eradicate different, or how they've worked with different populations. So maybe you'll have a city that has focused on homelessness, and so they've eradicated homelessness, or they have already put systems in place to work with the homeless. And so then maybe they don't have a huge need to house the homeless, but maybe they haven't put that much time into housing foster care aging out of youth aging out of foster care. So it just depends. I think every community is different. Every community has chosen to dedicate their time to certain populations. And so it really does depend on the community that you're in.
And with you focusing on RV parks, like you mentioned, are there areas that you've discovered that, hey, this is a problem that we're solving? These are the communities you want to go into, or maybe you don't know the communities yet, but maybe you know what you want to be focused on. What are you leaning towards? Are you? Yeah,
no. So one of the things is there is a lack of workforce housing. And so there are a lot of large areas where there are warehouses popping up, Amazon warehouses, or large companies that are building these warehouses in certain communities. And what are they finding is that there isn't enough housing for the workers that are coming to build, or even the workers that are coming to work in these factories or these warehouses. And so that is a problem that you could actually solve with RV parks. Another thing that I think you could look at is environmental. So there are grants, there are all kinds of grants. So you just kind of have to see what region or area you're in and what is popping up in that area. So let's say that it's an area where they have an electrical vehicle company that's popping up, a factory. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can find some funding to put EV, the vehicle charging stations in the area where you're going to have your camp. Or maybe there is an opportunity for using some of that land for solar or electrical type of services. So I'm just grasping at different things here, but it really kind of comes down to, where are you buying, or where is the property located, and what is that community look like? What do they have? What are their needs? Every community is going to be different. So if I'm going to have workforce housing for a factory, now we're talking about blue collar workers. So what type of housing are you going to provide? If it's you have a lot of veterans in that community, maybe you want to provide a different type of housing. So everything is dependent on the community, and then what their needs are, and you identify that problem, and you identify the population, and then it's really about figuring out, how can I solve that problem, and then what can I provide for them.
So Luz, you went and got you're working with the city, I take it, and they said this is what they need. And did they give you like the entity to lease to for this, like the YWCA, or did you have to go find out who was going to fulfill that?
So there are a couple agencies that I could go to. And so that's in conversation. So ideally it would be the one that the city had created. They are in a situation right now where they're raising funds for a building themselves for the actual site, the offices. So they're looking to relocate to a bigger space where they can, from where they are currently. So they don't know if they can take on the operations of the space. So there's another agency that does the work as well, same work, working with families fleeing domestic violence. So that's another one. And a third one would be approaching a YWCA, which I used to work for, and other services that are in the community. So really it kind of comes down to, okay, who would be the best operator for this, or maybe multiple operators. So it just depends, again, it's searching and finding who's going to be the best fit for it.
And then once you get this property and it has all these grants, are you restricted by these grants as to, other than what you're going to do with the property? I mean, how much control does a grant create you as an investor not as a nonprofit, but as an investor? What are the
It
controls?
depends on the grant. So these grants are actually set aside for development. These are specific for the development, and it will say in there what it can be used for, what can be allocated to it, what can be paid for it. So what we've done is at first it was one grant that they offered me. Then they said, okay, we have 2 more grants, and they are each up to $1 million. And so we took the 3 grants and we plotted them across our pro forma and said, okay, what in the list will this grant cover? What in the list will this grant cover? And what in the list will this grant cover? And so we are going to be able to recapture almost all the expenses with at least one of those grants. And there are some expenses that you won't be able to cost them all out to a grant, because as grants are, they don't cover everything. Mostly it's direct expenses. So anything that's operations, that is an indirect service. Indirect could be your director, the people who are running the services, not directly, but maybe they're in the back office, they're doing finance, they're doing, the admin side of it things. You can only charge out a percentage to that. So those are the things that we would then have to capital raise from another source to be able to bring in additional funding.
Wow.
But now to answer the other side of the question is, if you received a grant, the grant will be very specific as to how you can spend the money. Okay. And you have to submit a budget where you say how you're going to spend the money that you're requesting. So really very quick, easy example. If I was applying for a grant for $10,000 and I said that of those $10,000, I'm going to pay $5,000 in salary and $2,000 in materials and supplies and $3,000 in office supplies. I have to spend the money, the $10,000, exactly like I said I was going to spend them. Whatever I don't spend in those categories, I have to give back to the grant funders. Okay. And you have to submit quarterly reports or monthly reports, budget-wise and program-wise. And when I went in and applied originally for those $10,000, I not only said, this is how I'm going to spend the money, but this is what I'm going to do. And this is the outcome that I'm going to give you for you giving me this money. So when I do my reports on the program or the project, I am also letting them know, okay, this quarter I did this, and this is the output and the outcome. This quarter we did this, this, and this. These are the outcomes and the outputs. So you have to let them know exactly what it is that you're doing, when you're doing it, and that you've accomplished what you set out to do. So that it's free money, but there are strings attached.
That really would put we all know how to do budgets, and we all know how they can go wonky and how they can go south or change or need funding one place more than the other, or just things happen. Mm-hmm. And would you dig in? So that would be really, can you amend that at all, or? Okay. Yes.
So usually you can do within a 10% spend you can move within the blind items, 10%. But there usually are 2 opportunities. If let's say it's a year cycle, a grant, there are usually 2 opportunities that you can do a budget amendment. So usually it's at the end of the second quarter, and then right before the start of the fourth quarter, you're able to do an amendment towards the end of the year, because things change. Sometimes when you're ramping up in the grant process, let's say your plan was to hire somebody, but you get the money, you get the grant, the contract, and you're ready to go, but you can't find somebody. I mean, who else is having trouble finding people nowadays? Hiring staff is not easy. So it could take up to 2 to 3 months to hire somebody. So that's a whole quarter of funding that you didn't use up in that first quarter. So yes, so that's funding that you want to reallocate and move somewhere else.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So to pivot just a little bit, I'm sorry. Did you have something you want to say, Sharon?
I just said I'm taking notes.
So just to pivot just a little bit, and let's dive into, I own a small business in a community. It's a home service type of business. We do emergency work for people. Like right now, we're flooding all over the place in Washington State. And we run and do emergencies, and we take care of people, and we make sure that they're taken care of. So in something like that, are there grants available for small businesses to be able to utilize in either growth or in any aspect of the company? Maybe there's other equipment that needs to be purchased in order to help more people, more sump pumps to pump the water out of the crawl spaces, and stuff like that as things are happening.
Well, and I'm thinking like the funding for like an elderly person who can't afford it, or doesn't have the means to even hire you. I mean, I'm thinking grants that direction as well, to be able to help
Exactly.
people that others can't help.
And I say possibly because, again, you have to, the main thing that you always have to ask yourself is, could I get a grant for this? Is what is the problem? And who am I trying to solve the problem for? So usually if it's a business and you're lucrative and it's just for the business, they're probably not going to give you funding because you're a business. However, if you as a business are solving a problem for a population that tends to be underserved, you're solving a problem for a population that needs it, that can't afford to pay for the services that you're providing, and there might be a grant available for that. So I know that there are grants made available to help seniors with rehabbing of their homes. Many of them are on fixed incomes. They can't afford to do the upkeep of their homes. And with inflation, now their steady income that doesn't increase because they've retired, doesn't go up, but the cost of it, inflation, everything is costing more. They're unable to put anything towards their homes. So I know that the government has made some grants available to be able to help and support individuals who are under a certain income amount to help them do rehabbing, do roofs, anything that they need for their home. So that's a possibility. So you kind of have to go down that route. Again, I always say this, what are the two things that you have to always ask yourself? What is the problem and who am I solving it for? So if it's a target population that you could solve that problem for, and there is a problem that they have, chances are is that you could find funding for that somewhere.
That's a very good point. And it just kind of drives it home when you keep saying that, because it's almost like anything sounds like it's finding the problem, what needs to be solved, and how do we solve it?
100%. That is exactly it. And that's why people ask me, is there a grant for this? My answer is always, well, possibly, or depends, Yeah. The other option is if
You're
you're
like a lawyer.
I know. I do sound like
it depends.
And then the other thing you have to look at it is there's always loans, small business loans, SBA loans, that's where they're going to offer you a loan. But if you're solving a problem for a target population that has a need, you'll probably be able to get a grant.
Great to know. How accurate do you think if somebody went on chat and just said, hey, this is where I live, are there any grants available? Has anybody done that? And do you know if that's even very accurate? I know they said.
If somebody said, I live here and there are grants available, yeah, there are going to be grants available, but it's okay. What do you need the grant for? What are you trying to provide? So
Right.
You kind of have to dig deeper. That's very broad.
Right.
So you'd have to, yes, there are grants available everywhere. There are grants through the city, through the county, through the state, through the federal government. There are foundation grants. There are corporation grants. The Dollar Tree, or the General Dollar has grants. All these different companies, they will give grants out. And so it's a matter of, again, identifying the problem, who you're solving it for, and who is willing to provide money for that.
Grants paid for half of my college. There was a foundation and I had to go and I had to apply for the grant. I had to explain my poverty level. I had to explain being a first generation college student. I have to explain what I want to do after. I had to explain how many hours and what it cost and how much my books were, just like you said. And then I ended up needing my husband needed a lot of dental work. And we ended up asking, hey, can we spend part of this money on my husband's dental work, because he truly needed 2 root canals. And I told the person who introduced me to the grant I was just going to spend money on that, and he's like, oh no, don't do that. You need to tell him, you need to ask him, and but yeah, pretty much anything, just like she said. Even if you have a kid that in your community that wants to go to college, that is first generation and poor, it seems like there's kind of grants for anything, like you said, Luz.
There are grants for everything and anything.
It's just a matter of finding them.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. If this friend didn't tell me his family had a foundation, then there's no way you would have ever known. So I don't know whoever asked the question, how do you find them? That's brilliant. Now we have ChatGPT.
Right. I was wondering how accurate that was. I guess we'll have to just ask it. We're looking at a property here in the Phoenix area, and we walked it with the agent, and he said it's got floor plans for a 5-plex, and it's just kind of an open slate. And I'm like, does Phoenix allow co-living now? And he's like, I think they do now. So I'm like, oh, so now I need to go to planning department and see what they would allow for possibly a co-living housing situation or something too.
Yeah.
So,
The other thing is don't discard collaboration and partnerships.
yeah.
That's the other way I like to go. Now, as an investor, when I'm looking at something, I don't want to write a grant. I wrote grants for plenty of years, and they are a lot of hard work. Okay.
Right.
If I can piggyback or partner with an agency that can apply for the grant, and I'm going to be the person who's going to be providing the end use of that funding, I would rather do that. So I partner with them. They go and apply. They already have a partner that they write into the application. I do a memorandum of understanding or a letter of support, whatever, to state that I am going to be that organization or business or company that will be providing the service to them when they receive the money to pay me. So, don't lose sight of the fact that you don't have to write the grant yourself. You can actually partner with an organization that needs to secure housing. And guess what? Hey, yeah, I'll take your vouchers or your payments. It's just like Section 8. Think about being a Section 8 recipient. You house the individuals who receive the vouchers and you're providing the housing. Well, it's the same thing. If you're working with an agency that they receive funding directly from the government or the state to pay for housing, you're going to be the person who's going to provide the housing. And you have to be, then you say you're willing to take the individuals and you're willing to work with them and put an agreement in place and receive the funding from them. Yeah.
And with grant funding, do you have to have kind of the capital up front to put in and then like, here's a receipt, let's reimburse you? Or is it more, you just need to tell them, here's what I'm spending it on. And then after the fact, report back to them, here's my stuff. See, I did spend what I said I was going to on what I said I was going to.
Both ways. It just depends on the funder. So some funders will do a reimbursement basis. So you spend the money and then you provide the receipts and proof of what you've spent on. And it has to be within the budget that you submitted originally, and then they'll reimburse you. Other times they will pay you quarterly, or they'll give you the money up front. And then you have to demonstrate that you've spent on the money appropriately and correctly. And at the end of the year or at the end of the grant cycle, they'll do they'll do a, I can't even think of the word. They'll balance everything out. And if there's anything that you did not spend, then you have to pay it back. Or if you can't demonstrate that you spent it correctly, then you have to pay it back. So that's another way. And then I'm trying to think, what's the third? Oh, the third thing is you could end up doing a match. So that's called cost match, where going into the grant, they might say, okay, you can apply for this grant, but you have to put 50% of the money down. So if you're going to apply for $50,000, you have to come up with $50,000 of your own. So it just depends. There are the three different ways that can be done.
So, but they can actually help you with the purchase of a property that you want to fulfill and turn this into some type of housing that they need.
If the grant allows it, if that application and that funding that is set aside states that that's one of the areas that will be covered by the grant, yes, absolutely. Everything comes down to the request for proposal or notice of funding opportunity. They go by different names, but basically it's that document that is going to tell you everything that they want. They'll tell you, this is what we want you to provide, or this is what we are providing funding for. And we will allow, you have to be eligible by meeting these requirements. And you can spend the money to do these things. And then you just follow that map, that roadmap. It tells you exactly what you need to do, what you need to provide, and what can be charged to the grant and what cannot be charged to the grant.
And how's this process? Is it a very long process to go through?
It can be. It depends on how long the grant is. Sometimes a foundation grant, you can get it in 1 week. Sometimes it's just a one-page application. You fill it out, you submit it, and then they notify you. Other times they do a letter of invitation. They say, let us know why you need this grant. You submit information. They say, oh, okay, we're inviting you to apply for the grant. And then you apply, and then you can receive it within a couple or a few weeks. Other times there is, depending, like, for example, state grants. They will release a date when they're going to. They'll release a date on when you have to submit the application. They usually will have a TA session before that, technical assistance session, where you can ask all your questions. That's usually a process of a few weeks. Then you submit your application. So that's another few weeks before you submit your application. Then there's another few weeks where they get to read all the applications and make the decision. And then there's another few weeks before they notify you. And then there's another few weeks where you negotiate the contract, because sometimes they don't give you what you applied for. And so you have to revise your budget. You have to revise your program plan. And then you move into the actual contract stage where, hey, we've now signed off on the contract. So it can be a 3 to 4 month process. So usually the grants that I would apply for larger grants. Most of them were state grants. And I would start in February or March. The notice would come out, let's say in February. I would have February through March or middle of March to submit, to prepare, to get it written, to submit. And then I would have a waiting period of about March or end of March, where I just sat there and waited for the notice to come. So we'd be notified maybe around end of April, beginning of May. And then it all happened very quickly. And so then finally we'd get a contract in place by last week of May, to start hiring people July 1, because that's the beginning of the fiscal year, and then the program begins. So yeah, it's a long process.
Hey, ladies, February is coming up.
I know, right? I know.
I would even recommend that before February comes, and some of them come out in January, some of them come out in March, okay? But what I would recommend is you have to start your research early.
Right.
Yeah.
What types of grants are being awarded? Who has received them? This is my biggest hack, is I find out who has received them in the past and why did they receive them? Why were they awarded? What was so special about them, or what was so special about what they are offering in their grant, in their program, that they received the grants? And then I am not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to look at what that is. I'm going to either provide something very similar, if I can offer it or if I can do it, and then I'm going to improve on it. And then now I have something to see on. Yeah.
Smart.
Right. And then sometimes those are the ones you want to work with as well.
Exactly.
Hey, do you have more of a need for this? And we have the property. We'll go out and fix it to your needs.
Excellent point. Exactly.
Yeah. So are you finding these people out just researching online, or going down to the cities and asking, or?
Are you talking about the people or the
these ones you said? Why were these types of awards given out, and who and why they were awarded those?
It's all public information. So I would start with the federal government, and I would see what grants are available. If I was focused on domestic violence, I would go into the department that works with domestic violence. Okay, VAWA. So there's a department that works specifically with victims of violence. Okay, and in that department, they release grants. Now, I'm not going to go after a federal grant. However, I know they have funding that they give out. And so I'm going to find out who they awarded last year and the year before and the year before that. I'm going to find out everybody who received these grant applications. And maybe I'm looking at the state that I'm working in. So the state that I live in. Now I find out who all received them in Illinois. Now I reach out to those organizations and find out how they use their money. I look at what programs they implemented with the money that they received. And then that's where I start doing my research.
Makes sense. Thank you for that.
Fascinating. I could talk to you for hours. But I know you have to go, and it's almost over.
That is why I've been the fastest one. I mean, there wasn't like enough time. I started looking at the clock, and I'm like, it is not already.
Girl, you have no idea. I've been trying to get my claws in Luz for a year now. Like, just sit down and talk to me for a minute. Luz, thank you so much.
You're so funny.
I'm so glad that you came on today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. This has been great. I love all you ladies. You're all amazing. And I just love seeing all that you're doing in the investing world. And I'm just glad I had this opportunity to sit down and talk to you.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you. And like, we've never had anybody that talks about this. So this has been, and we've been a little over a year doing this. So this has been a great information, Liz. We really appreciate it, because it opened eyes to a lot of people, and just like different opportunities come along. You're like, we should go check to see if there's a grant for that.
Well, let me share that I just started doing YouTube Live. I did my first one about a week and a half ago. Yeah, a week and a half ago.
Yay, good
I was like,
job.
oh my gosh, am I really going to do this? But here's the reason I decided to do it. Not that I love to do. I hate being on camera. That's a fact. But I have information that I want to share. And I have so many people asking me about grants, and I don't want to write grants anymore. I'll be honest with you. I'm consulting on grants. So anybody who's interested in that, I am consulting for them. They pay me for the consulting fee, and then I kind of go over whatever it is that they want to apply for, very dialed in and specific. But anybody else who's asking me about grants, I don't have the time to sit and answer one-on-one questions. So that's why I decided to do the YouTube Live, so that anybody who does have questions can come and ask them there, and then I can address them. And then that way others are also learning as we go. I am, that's my handle right there. My YouTube is at Luz Ramirez Consulting. So please go subscribe, set the notification so you know the next time I'm going to go live. I don't even know when the next time I'm going to go live is yet, but I will be doing that probably this weekend. And there were many people who said they were going to come last time. Not many, I had a few, but it takes a while. I also didn't announce it with a lot of, notice. So I think I'm learning how to be better at that. But the goal is that people who come on the live can ask the questions that they have.
Okay,
Nice.
let me give you a hint because I've been doing this for a year now.
A little over a year.
When you go live, give them a countdown, right? That's why we do a 5-minute countdown, because when you first go live, right, nobody shows up. It takes a few minutes for people to go, oh, I just got a notification on my phone. They're live. Let me go see what's going on. So
great. Thank you for that. I'm learning. ChatGPT and I had a conversation on the first live because I wasn't getting any chat on the side. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, help me. What do I do? It was guiding me through the process. And I'm like, okay, well, finally was able to get the chat up and running, which was crucial, for me to be able to have a conversation on there. Right. But thank you for that. I like that. I really like that idea of the countdown. And now I have to ChatGPT how to do that.
Going on at the same day of the week and the same time helps too. My old buddy, Lumberjack Landlord, he's built up a huge following over the years. And then Connor Steinberg has the longest running EXP call, Mondays at 10 a.m. Central. And he always has a lot of people show up. And so no matter what he's doing or what they're both doing, they do it every week at the same time. And don't get me wrong, I think maybe sometimes you end up talking to yourself. Like it's the first couple of months even, but then I think you gain like a cult following over time.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you guys think that that's the case? Have we developed a cult following here yet?
Yep, absolutely. 1,000%. The first few weeks, we had Jim Mullinex every week without fail. And and then we started building up an audience. And now I probably have like a couple dozen maybe that actually watch live, but then we have several hundred that watch after we've already filmed and like it's on the YouTube. And so
there's a difference here.
Time.
You have other people that you're doing this with. See?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I have to get you.
Now that I know, you have given me free reign to come join you and ask you questions.
100%. Please, I would love to have you come on and ask all your questions. I just want that to be, I want to help. I want to provide the information I know and share it because I don't want to write grants anymore. That I did for many, many years, but it's so much information that I know. Like, how can I not share that? How can I not share that? So that's what I want to do.
Yeah, I think that's great.
When you don't have anybody asking questions too, you could even just share stories like Skip grant writing guy. He's always getting on YouTube and he's always sharing a story, and it could be a quick little story or something like that because it kind of incentivizes, as well as your brain starts thinking, oh, I didn't think about that. What about this situation I'm in that maybe now I could ask a question to Luz? So that might be something that you might want to plug into your live.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Well, look at you. The master's teaching me. I love that.
Well, I get to see you. I get to see you in January too.
Yeah,
so excited.
Very excited. Can't wait. A little bit of warm weather.
Yeah, true.
Thank you, ladies. This has been
Thank you for coming on. We're going to say good night. Good night. And we'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.